Welcome back to HFY Universe. No human had ever survived a single day inside the galaxy's most feared all-female combat unit. Yet somehow, a paperwork mistake placed one ordinary human soldier inside their barracks. 3 hours later, every alien warrior in the room was staring directly at him. Not because they hated humans, because according to an ancient military prophecy, a human was never supposed to be there. The battle station Vanguard 12 floated above the burning world of Carthos Prime. Thousands of military ships surrounded the station while alarms echoed through every corridor. Inside the Human Alliance headquarters, Supply Officer Daniel Carter waited quietly for his next assignment. Daniel was not a famous soldier. He was not a hero. He had never commanded armies. He simply repaired drones, transported equipment, and stayed away from trouble whenever possible. That was exactly why nobody noticed the small mistake. One tired computer officer entered the wrong military code. Instead of joining Engineering Division, Daniel was transferred to Unit 7. Nobody checked the file. Nobody questioned the order. The transport shuttle departed only 6 minutes later. Daniel smiled. Finally, maybe this job will be easier. He had absolutely no idea where he was going. The shuttle landed inside one of the station's restricted military hangars. The doors slowly opened. Daniel stepped outside carrying one backpack. Then he froze. More than 100 alien women stood in perfect formation. Every one of them wore black combat armor covered with silver battle marks. Each carried weapons larger than Daniel himself. None of them smiled. The air itself felt dangerous. A loud mechanical voice echoed through the hangar. "Welcome to the Valkyria Combat Legion." Daniel blinked. Wrong place. Before he could leave, giant steel doors locked behind him. Another voice continued. "Transfer approved. Human recruit accepted." Daniel looked around nervously. "I think your computer made a mistake." No one answered. Instead, every warrior slowly turned toward him. Hundreds of glowing eyes locked onto the only human inside the room. Silence. One warrior finally whispered, "A human." Another quietly said, "So the prophecy was real." Daniel had no idea what they were talking about. A tall commander walked forward. She stood nearly 7 feet tall. Silver armor covered her body. A long energy spear rested on her shoulder. Across one side of her face ran an old battle scar. She stopped directly in front of Daniel. "My name is Commander Lysera. I command this legion." She looked directly into his eyes. "You requested transfer?" Daniel immediately shook his head. "No. Absolutely not. There has been a mistake." Lysera studied him for several seconds. Then she looked at the military tablet. "It carries official approval from Galactic Command." Daniel sighed. "Then Galactic Command has terrible office workers." For the first time, several warriors quietly laughed. The tension inside the room became lighter. Commander Lysera almost smiled. Almost. Daniel soon learned something unbelievable. The Valkyria Legion accepted only female warriors. For nearly 4,000 years, no male from any species had ever served inside the unit. Not because of tradition, because the Legion believed mixed units always failed during long wars. Until today. Daniel became the first exception. Not by choice. His room was placed inside the center of the women's barracks. Every hallway became strangely quiet whenever he walked through. Some warriors watched him with curiosity. Others clearly disliked his presence. Many believed he would leave before sunrise. One officer openly said, "The human will request transfer tomorrow." Daniel quietly unpacked his bag. "I hope so." The following morning began with combat training. Daniel expected paperwork. Instead, he found himself standing inside the largest combat arena on the station. Commander Lysera addressed the Legion. "Our next mission begins in 48 hours. The Shadow Swarm has destroyed 4 colonies. Our target is simple: survive." The room became silent. Every warrior understood the meaning. Many would never return. Then Lysera pointed toward Daniel. "The human trains with us." Every face turned again. Daniel slowly raised one hand. "I think there's been another mistake." Nobody laughed this time. Training started immediately. The alien warriors moved with incredible speed. Daniel struggled to keep up. He slipped, missed targets, dropped equipment, lost nearly every practice match. Some soldiers shook their heads. Others whispered, "He is weak. He cannot survive battle." Daniel heard every word, but he never complained. Every time he fell, he stood up again. Commander Lysra noticed. She had seen stronger soldiers. She had seen faster soldiers. But very few refused to quit. That evening, an emergency alarm echoed across Vanguard 12. Red lights flashed through every corridor. Military officers shouted orders. Large warships suddenly appeared outside the station. Enemy signatures. Thousands of them. The Shadow Swarm had arrived 2 days earlier than expected. Commander Lysra drew her glowing spear. Battle positions. Every warrior sprinted toward the hangars. Daniel grabbed the nearest rifle. His hands shook. Not from fear. From uncertainty. He still didn't know why fate had placed him inside this legion. But within minutes, he was about to discover why the galaxy had feared the Valkyria Legion for thousands of years. And why every one of those warriors had begun looking at one ordinary human very differently. The alarms had already begun. Enemy warships surrounded Vanguard 12. The Valkyria Legion rushed toward the launch bay. And the only human inside the galaxy's most feared all-female combat unit was about to enter his very first real battle. No one believed he would survive. They were about to be proven wrong. Red emergency lights flashed across every hallway. Mechanical voices repeated the same warning. Enemy fleet detected. All combat units prepare for deployment. Commander Lysra stood before her warriors. Her silver armor reflected the flashing lights. She raised her glowing spear. Today, we do not fight for glory. We fight so innocent worlds can see another sunrise. The entire Legion answered with one powerful shout. For the Legion. Daniel quietly tightened the straps on his armor. His hands still trembled. Not because he was afraid to fight. Because he knew he had never been trained for a war like this. He looked at Lysra. "I've never fought in space." She nodded calmly. "Then stay close to me." It was the first time she had spoken to him with respect instead of doubt. The transport dropships launched from Vanguard 12. Outside, space had become a battlefield. Blue energy beams crossed the darkness. Explosions lit the stars like burning suns. The Shadow Swarm had arrived with hundreds of attack ships. Their living vessels looked more like giant insects than machines. Their only goal was destruction. As the dropship entered the battle zone, Daniel stared through the window. An entire human cruiser exploded only a few kilometers away. Silence filled the cabin. Every warrior understood. There would be no easy victory today. The dropship landed on an abandoned mining colony. The streets were empty. Smoke covered the sky. Buildings burned in every direction. Commander Lysra gave quick orders. Second squad, protect the civilians. Third squad, destroy the enemy nests. She turned toward Daniel. "You stay behind me." Daniel simply nodded. The squad moved forward. Every corner felt dangerous. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Then, a loud scream echoed across the street. A group of frightened alien children ran from a damaged shelter. Behind them came dozens of shadow creatures. Long claws, black armor, glowing red eyes. Without hesitation, the Valkyria warriors opened fire. Energy rifles filled the street with blue light. Several creatures fell. Many more kept coming. "They don't stop," one warrior shouted. The swarm surrounded them from every side. Daniel noticed something everyone else had missed. Above the street stood an old cargo crane. Its support cables had already been damaged by earlier explosions. He quickly pointed upward. "Commander, the cables." Lysra looked for only a second. Then she understood. "Everyone back." Daniel grabbed a fallen plasma cutter. He aimed carefully. One shot. The cables snapped. The enormous crane collapsed directly onto the charging swarm. The ground shook violently. Metal crushed dozens of enemy creatures at once. The street suddenly became quiet. One young Valkyria warrior stared at Daniel. You planned that. Daniel smiled nervously. I just got lucky. Commander Lysra looked at the destroyed street.
No.
You observed your surroundings. That is not luck. For the first time, several warriors looked at the human with respect. The mission continued deeper into the colony. Soon they reached the central command building. Inside, hundreds of frightened civilians waited. Many were injured. Medical supplies were almost gone. A frightened child looked at Daniel. Are you here to save us? Daniel knelt beside him. We're all getting out together. The child smiled. The exhausted civilians suddenly seemed calmer. One elderly alien whispered. The human gave them hope. Commander Lysra quietly watched everything. She had expected arrogance. Instead, she found kindness. Suddenly, the walls exploded. A massive shadow beast crashed into the building. It stood nearly 15 feet tall. Its claws ripped through armored steel. Several Valkyra warriors were thrown across the room. Commander Lysra attacked first. Her glowing spear struck the monster's shoulder. It barely reacted. Another warrior fired heavy plasma rounds. The creature kept advancing. It was simply too powerful. Daniel looked around desperately. Weapons were failing. The civilians were trapped behind them. Then he noticed the building's fusion generator. An idea formed instantly. He ran toward the control room. Daniel! Lysra shouted, but he kept running. Inside the control room, warning lights flashed everywhere. The damaged reactor was becoming unstable. Daniel connected his military tablet. His engineering training finally became useful. He rerouted emergency power into the outer defense grid. Outside, every security turret suddenly came back online. Dozens of automated plasma cannons rose from the ground. The giant shadow beast turned toward the unexpected threat. Too late. Hundreds of plasma rounds struck the creature from every direction. Within seconds, the monster collapsed. Silence returned. Commander Lysra entered the control room. You repaired the defense system? Daniel wiped sweat from his face. I repair machines. That's the only thing I'm actually good at. Lysra looked at him for several seconds. Then she gave a small smile. Perhaps that is exactly why fate brought you here. The rescued civilians were safely evacuated. News of the battle spread quickly across Vanguard 12. Reports confirmed something surprising. The Valkyra Legion had suffered the fewest casualties of any unit fighting on the planet. Military officers wanted to know why. Several warriors gave the same answer. The human. Daniel felt embarrassed. I didn't defeat anyone. You all did the fighting. A young Valkyra soldier shook her head. You saved us before every battle even began. Another added, you see things we don't. For the first time since arriving, Daniel no longer felt like an outsider. Back aboard Vanguard 12, the celebration did not last long. Galactic Command intercepted a secret enemy transmission. It contained only one sentence. Capture the human alive. Commander Lysra read the message twice. Her expression hardened. She slowly looked toward Daniel. Until that moment, she had believed he was simply the victim of a paperwork mistake. Now she realized something far more dangerous. The Shadow Swarm knew exactly who he was. And they were willing to risk an entire invasion just to take him. The Shadow Swarm had revealed its true mission. They were not invading planets for resources. They were not hunting the Valkyra Legion. They wanted one person. One ordinary human engineer. But the greatest secret of the war was still hidden. And when it was finally revealed, the entire galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The command room aboard Vanguard 12 was completely silent. Every senior officer stared at the intercepted message. Capture the human alive. Commander Lysra slowly looked toward Daniel. You've never met the Shadow Swarm before? Daniel shook his head. No. I've spent most of my military career repairing drones and supply ships. Nobody even knows my name. The officers exchanged confused looks. Nothing about Daniel made sense. Why would the enemy risk thousands of soldiers just for an ordinary engineer? Only a few hours later, the answer arrived. Long-range scanners detected a massive object emerging from hyperspace. It was unlike any ship ever recorded. It was over 20 kilometers long. Its surface looked alive. Dark armor covered its body like giant scales. Every officer in the room fell silent. One veteran whispered, "The Hive Queen." No one had ever seen the ruler of the Shadow Swarm in person. She never entered battle herself.
Until today.
Across every military frequency, a strange signal echoed. A deep female voice filled every ship. "Return the human, and your worlds may survive." Commander Lysera immediately answered, "The Valkyra Legion does not surrender its own." The Hive Queen replied without emotion, "Then your extinction begins." Moments later, thousands of enemy ships charged forward. The largest battle in the history of the sector had begun. Outside the station, explosions filled space. Human cruisers fought beside alien destroyers. The Valkyra Legion launched directly toward the enemy flagship. Daniel sat inside the dropship, checking equipment. He still couldn't understand why he mattered. Lysera noticed his expression. "You are thinking too much." Daniel smiled nervously. "I usually fix broken engines. Today the galaxy expects me to save civilizations." She laughed softly. "I believe you can." It was the first time Daniel had ever heard the legendary commander laugh. The dropship reached the enemy flagship. The team entered through a damaged hangar. Inside, the walls pulsed like living flesh. The air itself felt strange. Every corridor moved slightly, as though the ship were breathing. The squad advanced carefully. Shadow creatures attacked from every direction. The Valkyra warriors fought with incredible precision. Daniel stayed behind them, helping where he could. Then, the walls suddenly sealed shut. The squad became separated. Daniel found himself completely alone. He wandered through the strange corridors. Instead of weapons, he discovered an enormous chamber filled with glowing crystals. In the center floated an ancient machine. As soon as Daniel stepped closer, the machine activated by itself. A calm voice echoed throughout the room. "Human genetic signature confirmed." Daniel froze. "What?" The machine continued. "Creator access restored." Suddenly, thousands of holographic stars appeared around him. An ancient recording began playing. A human woman wearing an old exploration uniform smiled at the screen. "If anyone is seeing this, humanity has finally returned." Daniel stared in disbelief. The recording explained everything. More than 12,000 years earlier, the first human explorers had crossed the galaxy. Instead of conquering worlds, they helped young civilizations survive. They created living machines to protect life. Those machines slowly evolved. Over thousands of years, one group lost its purpose. Without human guidance, the protectors became the Shadow Swarm. They no longer protected life. They consumed it. Daniel whispered, "So, they were created by humans." The machine answered, "Correct. Only a human may issue the final command." Before Daniel could react, the Hive Queen entered the chamber. She was enormous, nearly 10 feet tall. Black armor covered her body. Her glowing golden eyes never left Daniel. She did not attack. Instead, she slowly knelt before him. The Valkyra warriors, who had finally reached the chamber, stopped in shock. Commander Lysera lowered her spear. No one understood what they were seeing. The Hive Queen spoke quietly. "We searched for humanity for 12,000 years. We were never meant to become monsters. Our purpose was forgotten." Daniel looked into her eyes. For the first time, he saw sadness instead of hatred. The ancient machine asked one final question. "Creator, would you like to erase the Shadow Swarm?" Everyone waited. One command would destroy billions of creatures instantly. Daniel remained silent. Then he slowly shook his head. "No." The officers looked at him in disbelief. He continued, "If humans created them, then humans are responsible for saving them." The ancient machine responded. "New command accepted. Primary directive restored. Protect all intelligent life." At that exact moment, every shadow creature across the battlefield stopped fighting. Weapons fell silent. The war ended, not with destruction, but with mercy. Days later, the Galactic Council gathered for an emergency meeting. Leaders from hundreds of civilizations filled the chamber. Commander Lysera stood beside Daniel. The council speaker looked at the human. You had the power to destroy your greatest enemy. Why didn't you? Daniel smiled. Because winning isn't about destroying everyone who stands against you. Sometimes, the greatest victory is giving someone a second chance. The chamber became completely silent. Even the proudest alien leaders lowered their heads. Months passed. Peace slowly spread across the galaxy. The Shadow Swarm rebuilt the worlds they had once destroyed. The Valkyria Legion became famous not only for their strength, but for protecting the human who had ended the greatest war in history. Commander Lysera offered Daniel a permanent place in the Legion. This time, there was no paperwork mistake. Daniel laughed. So, am I officially a member now? Lysera smiled. You always were. The warriors around them laughed and saluted. The human who had accidentally joined the galaxy's most feared all-female combat unit had become its greatest legend. Not because he was the strongest, but because he reminded the entire galaxy that true strength is measured by courage, compassion, and the choice to protect life, even when vengeance seems easier. The end.